But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. This is HBR Debate number 11. TEDx speaker Bobbi Wegner says feminist boys are our future men. Oh boy, we can all look forward to that. And I'm Alison, and here with me is Brian Martinez to analyze this delightful proposition, as it were.
Yes, that's a really nice way of putting it.
Delightful proposition.
All right.
No sarcasm. Definitely it's delightful.
No sarcasm intended anyways. So I went through this. I found the hot takes, the ones that I are probably the most worth responding to. And we're gonna go for about an hour, and then we're gonna go into the after show for about an hour. There's a lot to unpack here, as you may have heard that phrase, but there really is quite a bit to look at. So a little bit about the person who is speaking. So maybe you guys should know before we get into the actual meat of this thing. Her name is Dr. Bobbi Wegner. Dr. Bobbi Wegner is a clinical psychologist with expertise in health psychology and behavioral medicine. Although she is a clinical health psychologist by training and often explores how biological, psychological, and social factors contribute to one's functioning, she identifies as an integrative therapist and pulls from many different evidence-based philosophies to understand each individual's unique needs. She specifically works a lot with pregnant women and new mothers. So this is sort of like her focus, right? And she put together this TEDx talk. So I just wanted to set the stage so you know a little bit about the person that we are responding to. So, and already we got a couple super chats, but we will look at those in I guess at the half-hour mark. We'll look at your super chats. So in the meantime,
just a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
New mothers and pregnant women.
Mm-hmm.
That's her specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just why is she doing this TEDx talk? Like,
well,
why? It sounds like it might come from the wrong perspective if she specializes in the people that she's not and she's not talking about. Like, so she's not talking about them. She's talking about men. And I mean, I don't want to be uncharitable, but I'm guessing that what we're going to get is men as they affect mothers and pregnant women, new mothers and pregnant women, or just women in general. Because if you're specializing in that particular point of view and you're talking about another, I think the inclination is to only talk about that point of view or that group of people, how they affect the people that you specialize in. I mean, and that's probably why people who specialize in something usually stay in their lane, in their wheelhouse, so to speak. So right off the bat, I'm a little bit scratching my head about this.
Yeah, that's why I looked her up. It's the reason why I looked her up and decided to find out what she was about. And I read that little blurb I read was actually off of her website, drbobbiwegner.com. So I'm only saying how she describes herself. Now, before we get into this, the name of this TEDx talk, so it is a TEDx talk, is Feminist Boys Are Our Future Men, Changing the Culture of Sexual Violence. Bobbi Wegner, TEDx Dartmouth. And this video is from 2018, so it's not new, but it is one that we hadn't seen yet. So we're looking at the approach of a clinical psychologist that works with women, primarily mothers and pregnant women. Also is a person who has a family of her own, which she establishes early on. She has 2 sons and a daughter. And this is supposedly where she is drawing her expertise from. So I'm going to play one clip just to give you guys a little bit of context, and then I'll get into the hot takes. Although the first clip is kind of a hot take on its own in a way. So this is a picture of her family, or her children at least, okay? So let's go ahead and listen to this.
That was 3 boys, right?
There are 2 boys and a girl. The girl's in front, and the 2 boys.
Oh, I see. Yeah, those are pigtails. Okay, I apologize.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I can see how
establishing
it
those gender norms there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's also got ratio to hell. If you can look at the like-dislike ratio.
Oh my god.
It's not good, but it does feel
fun,
nice.
Isn't it?
Yes.
When you see a ratio like that, you know, it's just...
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. All right, let's go. Let's do it.
And my goal is quite simple, actually. I'm here to raise good kids. And more specifically, how do I raise good guys? Good guys who will go out into the world and feel secure enough in themselves to stand up for women and to stand up for all people, and generally not be the creeps who just take what they want because they can. And the reality is, as you can see, I'm parenting from a very privileged position. I'm raising 2 white boys in a pretty privileged position.
All right, this is at the outset. I mean, before, I know that I jumped ahead a little bit because she's kind of meandering in her speech, and but basically she says, she sets it up by saying that she learned about all this stuff going on with Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and these other sort of Me Too movement, these men that were like at the front of the Me Too movement on everybody's lips. And she was listening to NPR, I'm not joking, and it threw her into a panic. And she realized that her sons could be the next people that would, essentially commit these kinds of heinous acts. And so she felt the need to act.
Wait. Is she raping her sons?
No, not that I know of. I mean...
Well, not that we know of, but seriously, if she isn't doing it, the best thing she can do to prevent her sons from becoming sexual predators is just not rape them. Just keep your hands off, lady.
And protect them from other rapists, too.
And protect them from other sexual predators. It's like the number one thing you can do. Number one. But I'm guessing that we're not going to be talking about the number one scientifically established way to prevent your son from going on to become abusive, which is don't sexually abuse him. Don't let other people sexually abuse him. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. You do that, and you will probably reduce the rate at which boys go on to become sexually abusive by 80, I think 60 to 80% right off the bat. If you do that, just get rid of that one thing. Of course, for the most part, boys who are sexually abused don't go on to abuse others. In fact, it's only, while it is the highest causal factor for a boy to go on to become a rapist or a sexual abuser, it is not every single boy who's sexually abused who does. In fact, it's a minority, a tiny minority. It's about 10%. So when I say that, I'm not saying that all boys who are sexually abused go on to become abusers, but it is a necessary condition for the most part for boys to become abusers. So if you don't want your boys to become abusers, don't sexually abuse them. Don't allow other people to sexually abuse them. If they're sexually abused, recognize it, get them help, and recognize the fact that boys are vulnerable to sexual abuse. This is how you would prevent probably 60 to 80% of the sexual abuse of women. That's what you would do. And that's what you would advocate for if you actually cared about preventing the sexual abuse of women. But I guess that's probably not even going to be a talking point. Is it in her lecture?
Well, I don't think so. But I don't want to give away anything. No spoilers.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers.
Okay, well, you know what? If it is a talking point, if she actually puts it out there as a way of preventing boys to go on to become abusers, don't abuse them, don't sexually abuse them, don't allow other people to sexually abuse them, don't sexually abuse them yourself, my dear Bobbi Wegner. Don't allow your friends to sexually abuse your boys. Don't allow their teachers to sexually abuse them. Just don't do it. And if it does happen, recognize it, don't blame them, and get them assistance with the negative sequelae. I learned that word, sequelae or sequelae, yesterday. get them assistance with dealing with that, with the fallout from that. That's the number one way that you would prevent boys from going on to become abusers. Number one. But okay, so is it okay? Oh, you were right. You don't want to give spoilers, so I was going to ask, is it like number? I know it's probably not going to be number one for what she's gonna present, but is it like? I get no. You said no spoilers. Okay.
No. Okay, so I do want to show another clip. This is to establish something that I'm sure people are asking about, because there's no mention of a dad. She does have a husband, and he is helping raise the kids. Okay. So this is a nuclear family that is intact for all intents and purposes. At least when you're looking at the literal definition of that. But let's listen to this next bit. Speaking of her husband.
I asked my husband, who's very patient, and I said, "Is this just how guys are wired? Do you want to go to work and pull your penis out?"
So she's talking about Louis C.K., but essentially whipping out his dick and asking women if he can masturbate in front of them. Of course, the way that she puts it is way less charitable than what I just said. I mean, in the case of Louis C.K., he literally asked women. Yes, he had a weird fetish thing, whatever, but he literally asked women if it was okay for him to jerk off in front of him, and they said yes, and he said okay, and he went ahead and did it, and he didn't touch them, he didn't lay a hand on them. But of course, this is still considered to be this on par with sexual assault and sexual harassment, when of course they could say no anytime. So she asked her husband if this is normal. Now this sounds to me like, at the very least, a really stupid thing to ask if you actually understand men. Of course it's not normal. This is the reason why it's making the news, right? But she has to I don't know, take that away or just like, minimize that in some way. So she asked her husband about it.
Okay, but
Go
Louis
ahead.
C. Clark, he did take Louis C.K. Or Clark. Where am I going with that? He did take them to a hotel, didn't he? So
Yeah.
Presumably this is in more of a sexual situation than at work. So she could equally ask, why do women go to hotel rooms with men and take off their panties and say, "Do you want to toss my salad?"
No, it absolutely was. I mean, like the whole thing was essentially sexual deviancy at worst. And because the women involved went on to tell the world about it, which that kind of shit, then people decided that because Me Too happened to be going on at the same time, that this must be another example of it. And he got swept up in all that, and he got canceled too, as a result. And I think that the Louis C.K. thing is actually kind of a pointless thing to bring up, because ultimately it's consenting adults doing whatever the hell they do, and nobody gets hurt. And just because it's weird, which is why I think, again, it's strange that she asked her husband if this is strange, when the only reason why she knows about it is because it's fucking strange. Sorry. No, it's true. But like, that's clearly a rhetorical comment she's making. Like, is this what boys do? But it does give you it gives you a peek into, it does give you a peek into her idea of men and masculinity, because she sees what Louis C.K. does, which is something that I wouldn't even say is that far into the extreme edges or fringes of sexual deviancy, and she makes a broad brush assertion, or at least a passive aggressive comparison to men at large and Louis C.K.'s behavior. And again, it's completely harmless, if not just a bit strange. So, and she asked her man to answer. And by the way, guys, if you're watching this, don't adjust your screens. I have put some filters through just to protect us from copyright. This video is a couple years old, but you never know, with and it's always better safe than sorry. We want to be around for a while, and that means we're gonna have to take some steps. So if people look funny on the screen color-wise, don't sweat it. It's just the filters that I put through. All right, Alison, do you want to say anything else before I play the rest of this clip?
I am waiting with anticipation to find out what her husband said, or what he thought she wanted to hear anyway.
Yeah.
Smart guy, and very promptly said no. But
So she says he's a smart guy and very promptly said, no, this is not something that guys just do. That's just to give you guys a full context.
So the father of her sons is a guy who wouldn't do that. Why does she think that her sons are so likely to become? Why is she suddenly jumping to this idea that her sons are some sort of alien creatures, like blood-sucking alien creatures? I mean, especially since she seems to be fond of their father. Why would she think that they would be that much different from their father or their primary male role model?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's.
Well, I don't think I think that she's using this as the launching off point, but I personally believe, because I don't think she ever says this, and so I won't count this as a spoiler. I personally believe that she believes that men are broken from the get-go and they need to be fixed. So this is why she counts her husband as the exception and not the rule. And I think that's why she's doing that. And she probably thinks her sons, if she can get to them early enough, if she can fix them, if she can essentially, brainwash them early enough, she can save them from the, essentially save the women everywhere by saving them from their own toxic masculinity. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. So, all right, let's keep going.
Then I thought, this is a problem, and this is something I have to talk about. So at this moment, I just became really aware that this is a big problem. And I went and I realized there were big 6-year-old ears in the room with me as I'm listening to this, cooking and thinking through all this stuff. And I realized my son's lying on the floor beside me. So I rush over to the radio and I reach to turn it down. And then I have this moment of consciousness. And I think,
all right, I'm pausing it here for the banana. And also to give you guys a little bit of context in this too. So she's telling the story. I'm skipping ahead because there's, like I said, it's a long video. But she's basically telling a story of her 6-year-old son who's hanging out playing on his iPad. 6 years old, okay, 6-year-old boy playing on his iPad while she's, preparing something like dinner or whatever. And she's listening to NPR, and they're talking about all this stuff going on with Harvey Weinstein. And it makes her essentially, panic. And she runs over to turn the radio down because she doesn't want her son to hear it. And then she comes to the realization, and that's what she's getting to now. So.
Okay, Brian.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So let me just get this straight. So she initially responds to protect his innocence, essentially, his sexual innocence, as one would when exposing a child to sexual content that could actually harm them. But instead of going with that instinct, she stops and says, no, I'm going to subject my child to sexual content that might harm him. Right. Okay. Yeah, you're a great role model.
Yeah, I think that's where this is going, basically.
Yeah, it's like you're going to take your 6-year-old and you're going to subject him to this because you've suddenly switched from being a parent who is trying to protect your child's innocence until you feel like he's emotionally ready to a person who regards your son as the enemy, and you're going to subject him to sexual material. So you're essentially going to, it's a mild sexual abuse. Mild.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, or is that allowed?
I would say it's worse than sexual abuse, as strange as that's going to sound, based on where she's going with this, because, let me play a little bit more.
We're sheltering our developing boys. Every time there's news that's difficult or sexual, we reach to turn down the radio or turn off the TV, and our boys are missing out on these really important conversations. So I decide, I know what message I want my boys to get. At ages 6 and 8, they're in the middle of their moral and cognitive development. I have this captive audience with these little lanky legs and these sponges as heads standing in front of me, and I know I need to talk to them directly about this. Piaget, a famous psychologist, says that children between the ages of 5 and 10 see morality through the lens of other. My guys are in between the ages of 5 and 10.
Okay, I'm pausing it there. So this is what I mean. I think, to me, this is worse because, hearing people on public radio talking about sexual assault or sexual misconduct in a sort of news pundit fashion, I think that it goes over a lot of kids' heads. Like, they hear it, but they're not really paying attention unless their parents are making them. And what I'm saying is, I think that what she wants to do is worse than just having him hear it, because if he's playing on his iPad, and there's just like news, it's just noise, it's just background noise, because he's focused on this thing. But she's not just, not turning the music down or the news down. She's actually getting her children engaged in this conversation. 6 years old and 8 years old. 6 years old and 8 years old. And she's approaching it from the perspective that as boys, they have to listen to this because they have to be better than the people that she's listening to. Her daughter doesn't know anything about this, to my knowledge. Is not involved at all.
Okay. So let me get this straight. She's making her 6 and 8-year-old boys listen to this story so that they can take responsibility for the sexual behavior of an adult man, of Harry Weinstein, essentially.
Yeah.
This is disgusting. I can see why she got this ratio.
Yeah.
It's like before these boys even have a sexual thought, you are forcing them to take responsibility for the sexual behavior of an adult man. Listen to what I'm saying. How is this person still have her license to practice psychology? If this is what she does, the reason why you initially turned it down or wanting to turn it down is because you were trying to protect your young boys' sexual innocence during a time where they're just developing the kind of theory of mind that goes on to be the foundation of our sexuality as human beings. Mm-hmm. You were trying to protect that, and you turned around and you negated your own desire as an adult to protect children from sex and sexuality too early, and you decided to subject them to it, and not just to exposure to sexual material, which, if you do it in a way that's age appropriate, that's fine, but you're making them take adult responsibility for something an adult man did.
Yep.
You're sexualizing your boys at the ages of 6 and 8. Jesus Christ. I mean, this is like really disturbing at this point. Okay, and this is okay, so we still haven't got to so I'm guessing from this that it's this idea that she's going to intervene and sexualize her boys at the age of 6 and 8 that's going to prevent them to go on to become sexual abusers or have a confusing relationship with their own sexuality. Wow, she's got off on the right foot.
Yeah, really. It's almost like this is probably, setting them on a path where they're more likely to actually engage in this kind of behavior. All right, so I'm going to play the next bit.
So I back away from the radio. I go back to the stove. I don't know what I'm going to say. I kind of wring my hands, and I'm panicking on the inside a little bit. And then I just say to myself, Bobbi, come on. You got to say something here or just say anything. So then I just say to him, hey, Ty, are you listening to this? Did you hear this? There's this really famous movie guy, and he was touching women when they didn't want to be touched, and he was saying inappropriate things, and now he's in big trouble.
All right, this is just part one. It's like I want to play the other 30 seconds. Do you want to say anything to this? Again, you have like this comparison, her son and Harvey Weinstein, not Harry Weinstein.
Why didn't you do the least bit of research, lady? As a professional, do you keep abreast? I mean, before you start talking about an area of study in psychology, maybe you should actually research the causal factors of how. And then you would have realized that the how, there's a Mrs. Robinson in between your kid and Harry Weinstein, usually.
Yep.
Who's decided that she likes the tender ones at the age of 8. or 6 or whatever, and that she's going to sexually exploit your child while he's forming his understanding of sexuality. No, that's what happens. That is the primary risk factor, is being abused. The primary single risk factor of going on to abuse others, same age peers in abused boys, as having been abused by a woman, and also neglect. So if you avoid getting your kid abused, or allowing your kid to be abused, abusing your kid, and you avoid that and neglecting your kid, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And it doesn't require exposing a 6 or 8-year-old to sexual material or the expectation that he take responsibility for the sexual behavior of an adult man. I mean, I don't even know what to call that. It's like almost like a category of sexual abuse that I had never considered before.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Sort of turning my stomach.
I'm sorry, that sucks. All right, so let's let me see. It's 6:32. I'm gonna look at super chats and then we'll keep going. So I got a couple here. Polaris 589 gives us $2 and says it's 2 minutes to midnight on the Boogaloo clock. Keep your eyes on Virginia. Egregious Charles gives us $5 and says nice Christmas bombshell, Brian. Thank you, Charles. Polaris 589 gives us $5 and says after the release of the Afghanistan papers, Boogaloo should be on the lips of every man, woman, and child. I don't have any other context to this stuff, so. French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says men are too insecure to stand up for women. That's her contention. And lastly, I got one more super chat here. Just give me a second. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says it's not about being hurt, it's about female feelings. All right. So let us continue the other half of this comment where she talks to her 6-year-old son about Harvey Weinstein.
I just kind of put that out there and I stepped back and then I sat in what felt like the most pregnant pause. I had images of him butchering the story to his friends on the playground and parents calling me being like, what the hell are you telling your kid? What the hell is your kid telling my kid? And then Ty pops his head up and I see that he's not shocked and he's not traumatized, but he just very matter-of-factly says, what? That's illegal? Didn't Trump do that?
Well, I mean, your kid is wrong about Trump, but seems like he knows right from wrong. Yeah, and then the whole bus clapped. The whole house clapped. Like, why even tell us this?
Sorry. I gotta...
What? Cats?
Yeah, the cat. Sorry about that. She's demanding some attention.
It's all right.
Okay,
it's all right.
Put you down now. All right, let's go.
All right. So, yeah. So her son is woke and fortunately isn't going to be raping anyone. So, or at least, well, right now. But she needs to make sure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I dropped to the floor. This happened. So, you know, and I'm not here to make political statements, but I'm here to talk about the messaging in our community.
Yeah.
And so in this moment, I realized that I have to deal with my own discomfort around this and move towards these conversations and bring these topics up to my little boys who are going to be our future men. So I just quite simply say to Ty, yes, bud, that's true. Trump did say inappropriate things, and that's not okay. We don't do that in our family. I don't do that. Dad doesn't do that. And you're not to do that either. Got it? Sure, Mom. Back to iPad.
Yeah, he's 6. I mean, you're basically telling him that like he's already getting exposed to shit that he probably shouldn't even be exposed to. So
he doesn't have a concept of sexuality, or at least not a concept of the ugly details of it. Or do you want to call it ugly? Well, it's pretty freaking weird. It's pretty alien. But you know, she doesn't have a concept of that. So what have you achieved?
Mm-hmm.
Like, of all, what is the great goal here? Okay, let's find out.
Let me jump ahead a little bit. I'm gonna jump up to just a few seconds. because it's not really, there's no point in, some of this stuff is just really repetitive. So
talk about these things. A few minutes later, he pops his head back up and he says, Mom, yeah, bud, what's for dinner? That's the life of a 6-year-old boy, but it's these small and fleeting moments that we need to capitalize on. So
what the hell did you even accomplish? He already knew it was illegal.
yeah, no, she felt like she did something. The fact that he knew that it was illegal means that she is successful as a mother, I think. At least that's in her mind, anyways.
You know, I was going somewhere a lot worse. So I guess this isn't that bad. If all you did was say, yeah, that's illegal. Yeah, Mom, that's illegal. And then moved on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is that how, like, that doesn't, are we supposed to clap now? Congratulations.
Well, we're not. Yeah, that's what I thought when she did that. I said, okay, so we're done here? Like, this is the end of the...
Yeah, we're done?
Men are okay?
Yeah, your son has figured out that it is illegal to do these things because they are illegal, at least to women.
Yeah.
To do them to women. And so the curtain closes on Bobbi Wegner's saga of how she taught her son that illegal things were illegal.
Yeah.
The end.
But unfortunately, it's not the end.
Oh, really?
And there is more. Yes, of course. So we have to get into while her kids are okay, because she's a professional and she's going to be able to make sure that they don't, grow up to rape women for as long as she's got like any say in it. Other mothers around the world, they are not as smart or as enlightened on feminism as she is, and so they are going to have to take steps. And she's going to show them why. So, but before I get into it, what's really interesting about this video is the ultimate thesis of this TEDx talk actually doesn't have anything to do with men. It doesn't have anything to do with women. It doesn't have anything to do with rape or reducing sexual assault or Me Too or any of that. Her ultimate goal is not those things. And if we don't see it, if it doesn't become apparent by the time this stream is over, I'll tell you guys what her ultimate goal is. But it's not any of those things that I said, because I watched this video already. So, all right.
And we thank you for it.
Yeah.
You're doing God's work.
Yeah, really. Any other super chats you guys give, I will read them at the end. So basically at 7 o'clock. And then we'll close the show out and go into the after show. All right, so let me play the rest of this clip.
By, and I thought a lot about the messaging in our community and the message that my boys get. Things that I don't agree with, that they're taking in, that I don't even realize. And then I realized this goes so much deeper than just talking directly about sexual responsibility. It's really about gender inequality and how we, particularly our boys and men, see our girls and women.
Oh. Oh God!
I didn't see that coming at all. I didn't see that coming. I had no idea that's what this video was about.
Well, in some ways I thought this was going to go darker. It didn't. If she just kept the conversation to, that's not good to do, and her son was like, yeah, it's illegal, Mom. Can I have some cheesy sticks? That at least is not as abusive as I thought it was going to get. So this is just a framing device for her payload, which was
yes.
This. Okay, all right. So we're not exploiting rape here, are we? We're not exploiting rape to give more gravitas to my particular viewpoint of the relationship between the genders. We're just we're just going on a segue. Okay, let's do it.
All right.
So how do we reconcile this? What do we do about this? So we need to talk about these things, but they're things that get in the way. And that's in part our psychology and our socialization. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And the first thing that really gets in the way is implicit gender bias. And I'm sure many of you probably know what this is, but it's when we make assumptions about others based on their gender.
All right, I'm pausing there. You mean assumptions like you're gonna grow up to go on and rape women when you get older? You mean those kinds of assumptions? Like that?
Yeah,
no, not those. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about girls wear pink and dresses and boys play with Tonka trucks and wear blue. Those are the really harmful assumptions, not the ones where all boys are going to grow up and rape women and beat up, other men and create all the wars and dominate and colonize and, segregate people and whatever other terrible things men do. Those are not examples of gender assumptions or gender bias. It's only boys wear blue and pants. That's the problem. And they like meat and push-ups. Those are the things we need to shatter.
Oh, God. And in the context of the top, she opened up on rape. So how about we shatter the stereotype that when women rape, it's less harmful or that they're less likely to rape? How about we shatter those stereotypes? No, well, let's find out. What are the stereotypes? Okay, so presumably she's saying that if we address this, then we will be reducing the rate of rape, right? So whatever she says next will reduce rape or do something for rape. Okay,
it has to. It has to. Okay.
Let's see the goods. Let's see the goods.
So our brains are always looking for shortcuts. They're looking to put people into categories because it's just more efficient. So girls, pink, sweet, fragile. Boys, active, strong, blue. Our brains aren't trying to be mean, but they're really trying to be more efficient here. A large study done by Harvard found that, it was from 2005 to 2015, found that 76% of people, men and women, believe that men are more suited for careers and women for homemaking.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Did they specifically find that women were less suited for careers or that men were less suited for homemaking? This is my question. Did she actually post this study?
No,
she didn't. Okay, all right. But you're just talking about men's sexual misbehavior. Why would people think they were suited to be around children? For exactly the same mentality that you're bringing to this particular TED Talk, even though it feels slightly incoherent, to be quite frank, Brian. This TED Talks feels like it's just, I know you took the hot takes, but it feels like it's all over the place in a lot of ways.
It is all over the place, and you're right. That you're absolutely right about that.
Okay,
it's this woman has a PhD, Alison. This is the best I could do. This woman has this only tells us how easy it is to get a PhD, by the way. But not exactly a super genius. Okay, and but what were you gonna say? What's all over the place?
Yeah, this is all over the place. So if she's saying that men are innately, something in her son is just going to end up making him into a rapist, why would she then turn around and advocate for men to be more likely to be better parents, thus better homemakers than women? Like, does she examine her own biases? Like what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Does she examine her own biases? And I really would have to look at this study, because what I want to know is, if we have a bias towards men in careers, is it because we have a bias towards men in careers, or is it because we have a greater bias towards women in homemaking?
Or we have a greater bias against men as homemakers.
Against men as homemakers.
Yeah. Well,
so is it? But while we still think that women can be fine in careers, we have a greater bias against men as homemakers. Is that what the statistics are showing? And I'm just curious about that. And the other thing is, if we've developed a bias against men or women in careers, perhaps we could attend to the fact that we have a gigantic social movement that seems to be all about scrubbing the public perception of women's agency from society. Because I imagine that a lot of people's attitude that women really can't manage careers is because they don't perceive that women have agency. But, perish the thought. Okay.
I want to know what any of that has to do with boys raping women. That's what I want to know.
Apparently nothing. I would hazard nothing.
Yeah. All right. So, but she says this is about gender inequality. This is what we need to fix. So, let me see. I'm going to play the rest of this clip here.
76%. So if this whole room, out of all of us here, 167 people believe that. either consciously or unconsciously. That's a big number. And our brains don't do that to be mean or cruel or sexist, but they're just trying to be efficient. They're using prior information we've learned from our parents and families to make assumption about current information, where we are today, and that, in fact, becomes our worldview. So what do we do about this?
Go ahead.
So what you want to do is make the brain less efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're responding to information in an efficient manner, maybe there's a reason for it. But here's the other thing. I know that the implicit biases, those tests don't just find that we associate homemaking more with women, and they also find that we associate all kinds of violence and in fact we associate all kinds of negative things with men. So why are you focusing on this? At the very least, you could say that we regard both homemaking and going to work to be positive things. So at least both genders are seen as contributing something to the greater society. Why not go after how boys and men are viewed as subhuman, violent, more likely to rape and engage in other forms of sexual abuse? Why don't we attend to those stereotypes? Or is that a little bit too radical?
Yeah. I don't know. Good question. All right. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Let's see. I'll finish the rest of this statement, and then, yeah.
We have to recognize this in ourselves. I don't share this with you to make you feel bad, but I share this with you because this is a brain thing. We all do this. And we can actually move forward from this if we can acknowledge it and see it in ourselves and not get hung up on the fact that we're thinking some of these things, but actually acknowledge it and make a choice to do something different.
Was that JoJo's commentary?
Yeah, apparently JoJo has some things to say about that. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry, he's a baiter.
No. He definitely expressed some of the feelings that I was having at that moment.
Yeah. I was definitely thinking. I think JoJo just picked up on it and said, "I'm gonna vocalize what you're thinking." So, so let's continue this. This isn't important, but I think it's hilarious because of how often we see this. So I'm just gonna play this part for the lulz.
So getting back to the original question,
she asked a question at the beginning of the video that I didn't play. She asked the audience what to think about how they feel when they hear the word feminist or feminism, and not to say anything about it, but just to hold on to it, and that they would come back to this later. So now that she's put all this stuff out here, she's coming back to that original statement. I'm just giving you guys that for the context, okay?
Okay. All right. But feminism, or at least the feminism that she's presenting, takes an issue like the sexual abuse of anybody, but zeroes in on the sexual abuse of women, completely misrepresents the primary causal factor for a boy to go on to become a sexual abuser, which is having been sexually abused, even though a tiny minority of abused boys do that. And then not only misrepresents the primary causal factor, then invents a whole bunch of other nonsense that actually prevents us from reducing the rate of rape of women and girls in order to perpetuate its own ideological lens about the world. Well, okay, so you want to know what I feel about feminism. I'm going to hold those feelings in, and maybe I'll express them after whatever she's saying here.
Well, she's about to clear the air for everybody, so.
Clear the air, okay.
What did you think of when you heard the word feminist? What images came to mind for you? What thoughts came to mind? What feelings? And kind of picture what that is for you. And then ask yourself, where did you get that information? From
feminists. But
from you. You've actually made me develop a completely new emotion in association with the word feminism. I'm cringing.
She's about to clear the air, though, guys. Clear the air completely. No matter what you think, this is the reality. This is the reality about feminism. See if you guys can guess what she's about to say.
Who told you that? I'm wondering if you imagine someone like this.
Yes, I do.
No, I kind of do. Honestly, what a feminist is simply a person who believes in equality for men and women. It's really simple.
Oh, of course.
What does believing in equality for men and women have to do with your framing of society, that society was built by men for their own benefit at the expense of women? I mean, those two things don't actually have anything to do with each other. They don't. But
No.
primarily what I've seen feminism do is not create equality. Repeatedly, I've seen feminists run from equality like a freaking slug from freaking salt. Not very fast, but that's not a good analogy. Something that fast running from something that repulses it, okay? You guys are running from equality at hell on your heels speed. And yet you insist that there's some magical connection between equality and your particular lens, your particular construction of the relationship between the genders. And incidentally, if there's only one relationship between the genders, then there are only two genders by definition. And your relationship between the genders is that men oppress, women are oppressed. So there are only men and there are only women. There are only oppressors and there are only the oppressed. So those are the two genders that you recognize because that is the only dynamic between them. Therefore, those are the only two that exist in your universal idea of what gender is. But this particular lens of framing gender relations, this way of framing the gender relations between men and women, between the oppressed and the oppressor, that has nothing to do with equality. There is no fucking connection between the two. And yet you insist there is. And what I notice is that feminists do a hell of a lot less equality and a hell of a lot more framing this hegemonic view of the gender relations between men and women.
Yeah.
More pushing that than creating actual equality. In fact, what I've noticed is you use that gender relation, you use that idea of the dynamic between the genders to explain why you don't have to push equality ever. You never actually do push equality. You never actually, and you don't even allow anyone to criticize the way that you have decided the genders are, the relationship between the genders. You have decided that your sons are oppressors, your husband's an oppressor, and you've always been oppressors. I mean, even being raised by a woman throughout all of human history, men have been raised by women. And they haven't even generated the kind of emotional bond that a man-eating tiger would generate towards women if they were raised by one. Right? You could take a predator that eats human, raise it, and it will have a bond with you. But not men. No. That is your perception of who men are and the relationship between men and women. And you only seem to use it to excuse the inequalities that you push. Okay, that's my attitude towards feminism. And I don't care how much you talk about how feminism is somehow associated with equality. Then if it is, what you're doing isn't feminism. It has nothing to do with feminism. Pushing this feminist conjecture about reality has nothing to do with actual feminism. If it genuinely is about equality. And might I add that you could look up the word police in the dictionary and read it. And the next time a police officer comes up and says, well, did you look at the dictionary definition of police? How can you accuse me of corruption or police brutality? That's not in the dictionary definition of policing. Jesus Christ. All right.
It's okay.
I'm good.
So we got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to jump ahead to the spiciest parts. But basically, she goes on and talks about, feminism is just about equality of the sexes, blah, blah, blah. And then she has this little anecdote where it's funny because, again, she talks about how important it is for us to take down, gender stereotypes and gender bias and blah, blah, blah. But then she tells us a story about how she once went on a trip to Miami with her girlfriends and left all the kids with their husbands to watch over them. And she just tells us that in brief, but doesn't actually take a moment to realize that she has been able to leave her husband and all of her girlfriends, left all their husbands at home with their children to watch them while they go on a vacation together, and doesn't actually realize that is in and of itself shows that you actually have, that you feel as though you can trust men with your kids. So how are you like squaring that circle? But anyway, that's not the worst part though. So we'll get into this, I think the best bits. So we'll jump 15 minutes up. This is after she's made the case as to why feminism is so awesome and boys should be feminist or something like that as early as possible. Let us play this bit.
So this moment, in part, shifted how I see that label. So I'm not here to finger wag bad boys or bad ambivalent.
Stopped. Oh, I'm back. It reconnected.
All right, sorry guys,
hold
we
on.
just
No,
we
it hasn't gone live yet.
disconnected.
Yeah, we're back. It's coming up. Hello. Looks okay. Yeah, we're back now. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. It just YouTube dropped us for a bit. So anyway, I don't know what you guys heard last, and I don't know if Alison, I don't know if you heard it. Do I need to go back and play that clip again?
You might have to for me.
All right, I'm gonna go back.
Hear it.
Yeah, I don't know if the guys didn't hear it, the people watching. So I'll go back 30 seconds so you guys can hear it again. I'm sorry if we're retreading old ground here. So I'll just play it again.
So this moment, in part, shifted how I see that label. So I'm not here to finger wag bad boys or bad ambivalent feminist, but the reality is the next generation of Louis C.K.'s and Mario Batali's and Kevin Spacey's are already here. They're on our playing fields, they're sitting in our classrooms, and we need to say something. We have this captive audience now with these little boys in front of us.
So the next generation of rapists are already here, amongst us. They walk among us. They're in our classrooms. They're on our playing fields. They're in your schools. And we have to say something. These 6-year-olds, they're just going to grow up and rape women.
Okay, so I still don't know what. Okay, so what are you supposed to do? Just talk to your son and be like, okay, well, don't rape, or this is illegal. Bad touch. What is the nitty gritty? Where's the payload? Where are the goods? Where are they? What is it she's proposing that these people do to make sure that boys don't become rapists?
Your guess is as good as mine. It seems to me that what she's saying is you have to raise your sons feminist so that they don't rape, so that they respect women. That's all I can think of. I don't know. So, but I'll play the next. There's 2 more clips here, I think, that you'll like, and then we'll go into the after show. So,
And fingers crossed, those guys aren't my boys or your brothers or the kids you know from home. But the reality is some of them are. And we need to make a choice about what we say to them. We can either wait and see if our boys are the ones who happen to push a girl past her limit as he's fumbling to figure out his own sexuality, or worse, becomes the guy who intentionally takes advantage of his younger female coworkers.
all right. Just another pause for the banana, and I'll play the last clip of basically she is fear-mongering, or at least spreading her own.
So essentially what she's saying is unless you conform to my ideology, your sons will become rapists. That's quite the pitch.
Yeah, that's not terrifying at all.
No, it's not manipulative. No. Almost like unethical salesmanship. No, none of that. Okay.
All right, last clip.
And we all have a captive audience in front of us. You and me, it doesn't really matter who you are, me as a parent, you in other ways. But we know we need to bring this up, and we need to bring this up now. What research tells us is that rapists don't see themselves that way. But they will say, yes, I have non-consensual sex. But they don't identify as a rapist. And we know these transgressions for these guys start early. They start in high school, they start in college, and they start with people they know.
Most rapists don't know that they're rapists.
That's
So
interesting.
there are boys that are born sinners. They don't know it. They sin without knowing. So yeah,
They just get hit by the rape stick. They
yeah,
just
It cannot be helped. I heard that and I was like, so what you're saying is if a boy is fumbling around, as our previous description, and he's awkwardly trying to figure out this whole sexual thing, which he's likely doing at a very young age, and he's really inexperienced. We have no way of knowing how experienced the woman he's with is. I mean, my first time, the woman I was with was way more experienced than me. Most of the girls in my high school were actually not virgins. I won't say they were hoes, but they were not virgins. And it was really awkward for me. So like she's saying that if it's awkward and something doesn't go quite to plan or whatever, it might be rape, but maybe you didn't mean it. And that's like the light end, right? But on the other extreme end is the guy who intentionally does this stuff. And it has nothing to do with the way that they might be growing up, the abuse they might receive, what they're subjected to, what their mothers do to them. That's not, it's just in them. They're socialized this way, but it comes from patriarchy. It comes from the male half of society. We need to emasculate them. We need to make them more like girls. I mean, that ultimately is what she concludes with. We have to raise them to be more like girls, to be more open to the feminine, and then they will be less likely to hurt women. And because ultimately, she doesn't care about men, she doesn't care about women, she only cares about feminism itself. That's what she's shilling. At the end of the video, she concludes by saying, you need to take the feminist oath to save your soul and the souls of people around you. And then maybe we can get to some form of equality. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's basically what she says.
Oh God.
Yeah.
This is like the shittiest. This is the shittiest attempt at conversion. I don't know why people get sucked into this. Well, apparently they don't, considering that ratio.
Yeah, they're not really feeling it.
No, they're not feeling this woman. But seriously, like, I would actually say that this is a dereliction of her duty as a psychologist. She should have read up on the primary causal factor that takes a young boy to becoming sexually abusive towards the same age peers, which is the best research that we have to understand why men rape and why they abuse, or what are the causal factors for it. And it is quite unequivocally having been sexually abused, having been neglected, and having suffered other forms of extreme abuse, in particular, having been sexually abused by a woman. And she completely just didn't even bother to look up that research. And instead, she's taking the one thing that would actually reduce the rate of rape of women, ignoring it completely, and then saying, oh, by the way, if you adopt my religious ideas, your sons won't grow up to be rapists. She's manipulating people's fear. She's manipulating people's fear in order to push her ideology.
Yep.
This is so transparent. And
Absolutely.
It's so ugly. Oh yeah, that's my final word on this.
Yeah.
Bobbi Wegner's epic was not very epic.
No, she's just another moron. It actually upsets me because she has a PhD and she probably gets paid pretty fucking well. And she actually does help men too. It's not exclusively for women. It's just that she specializes with women and pregnant women and mothers. But in her video, she does talk about a man that came into her office he wanted to talk to her about problems with his girlfriend, and she probed at him to figure out if he was a feminist, and he said that he was. So then she felt like, okay, like relieved, I guess. All right, so I will look at your super chats. Let us know what you guys think about this in the chat below. It seems to me it's just another basic feminist. It seems like it, like I said, PhDs, are they really worth anything? I don't know. I have my faith in education is waning by the day. So, let's see. Polaris 589 gives us $2 and says, is her kid a woke 8-year-old? No, a woke 6-year-old. He leveled up. Catherine Scully gives us $5 Canadian and says, this whole conversation is so above these kids' heads, they have no concept of what she's talking about. Either that or they're smarter than she is. and they know that something is wrong without it even being because her story makes it sound like she's like, oh my god, bud, did you hear, this is terrible, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, it's illegal, probably shouldn't happen. And then she's like, so I don't think you should do this anymore, and I think this is bad, or you shouldn't do it, and it's bad, and we don't do that. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he goes back to his like, I had no plans on doing it anyway, I'm fucking 6, you know. My pee only serves one purpose, you know. Like, I'm not even thinking about this shit, but okay, I guess, Mom, you know, let me go back to playing fucking Minecraft now.
Well, I actually thought, to be honest, I was getting a little bit disturbed because I thought it was going to be worse. I thought she was going to get into more detail or like just make it make sense to him, or
get into the grisly details.
Get into the grisly details. Sexualize her son. I mean, it is still. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but it is still sexualizing her son and making him take responsibility for. If you're going to go and say, yeah, don't do that, which is what she did. You know, I don't do it. My husband, you don't do it. I mean, is she saying that to her daughter? Probably not.
She doesn't mention her daughter. Doesn't come up.
She is making him take responsibility for this kind of sexual behavior, sexual aggression between adults. And that's why. Why would you sexualize your son in that way and make it such a negative, such well, sexualizing your son is bad in and of itself, but then to make his sexuality into something like that. It's like equate it with Harry Weinstein's. Why would you do that? Well, of course, because she wants to sell feminism, but
yeah.
All right.
Ultimately, that's what this comes down to. Ray Patson gives us $5 Australian and says, this equals love jihad. Muslim men love bombing and marrying Christian and Hindu girls only to proselytize them. Feminist breeding to raise future feminists. Yeah, I agree with the last part. I'm not really sure about the other part. Do you want to say anything to that, Super Chat, or should I just move on?
Well, I think religious people do like to convert others into their religion, or in some cases, some just are happy to live and let live. But there you go.
Yeah. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, feminists always talk about, quote, we need to be teaching boys about consent, end quote, but they never talk about doing the same thing for girls. Why is that? Because they don't think that girls have the ability to, or the agency to do that, to do that terrible thing. And it's not in their nature. Feminists believe that it's in boys' nature and they have the agency to do it. They don't think that about girls. That's what I believe. What about you, Alison?
I think they think that it does. Girls do it, but it's for whatever reason, either they think the prevalence is too low or it's just not important to address.
Or maybe it's justified in some way.
I mean, it really runs the gamut. Like, it depends on the type of feminist. Some will just say, well, they'll acknowledge that it's bad and it should be recognized. But then they'll say something like, well, but it's so rare. It so rarely happens that we shouldn't even talk about it that much. And then you'll have the feminists who are like, well, when a woman rapes a man, it's defying patriarchy and it really should be celebrated. And I'm not shitting you on that one. And then you'll have the feminists who will tell male victims that they should keep quiet because, it's more important to promote feminism. And feminists use rape in this context to sell feminism. And they also use it to sell the idea that men oppress women and they all benefit from rape. And then there are the feminists who, they use rape as an excuse why they somehow think that if they reduce the population of men to 10%, there won't be rape. They seem to forget the fact that female prisons have the highest rate of inmate rape.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that reducing the population to 10% of men would actually probably increase the rate the rate at which women are raped. So I mean, and then there are the feminists who actively discriminate against male victims of rape, like Mary Koss, when she basically erased them from, or at least she influenced the Center for Disease Control to erase male rape victims of female rapists from their statistics. and instead classified it as made to penetrate. And all of her writings on how, you can't consider, if a man is raped, if he's even forced to have sex at gunpoint, you can't consider it to be rape. It's just sort of like surprise gift sex that he didn't know he wanted at the time. And you have those feminists, and you have the feminists who are also actively lobbying against making rape laws more equal. For example, in India and in Israel, they either blocked or removed laws that protected boys and men against female rapists. So, I mean, they run the spectrum, but the part of the spectrum they generally don't occupy is the rape of men is as important as the rape of women. The rape of men is an underaddressed issue that needs more attention right now than the rape of women. And if we address the rape of men and boys, we will reduce the rate at which women and girls are raped. And we'll also reduce the rate at which men and boys are harmed by rape. But they're not on that side of the spectrum. They're not on the side of the spectrum that would actually look at rape in a way to reduce it, to genuinely reduce the victims of rape, and to look at the actual reason why it happens. They're not on that side, I've noticed, except for one, Laura Stempel. But I suspect that she may be flying the colors, like you fly the Jolly Roger, whatever, the skull, so that you can sneak among the pirates unaware.
Yeah.
And not get your head cut off. I suspect that she may be just trying to fly under the radar, which is why she makes her focus is on male victims of sexual abuse. She very carefully frames it as a feminist issue, although the only people who seem to dislike her research are feminists. So there you go.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
All right, Ray Patson gives us $2 Australian and says she has a PhD, which equals permanent head damage. And we do not, I disavow. We do not promote violence on this channel. I'm kidding.
No, I think she means that.
I know. She has brain damage.
Yeah, not that we are wanting.
No, I mean, like, it would explain some things, but I actually think that she's just really, like, she seems to be the type of person based on her stories. I didn't play all the clips just based on the whole video. Maybe you should watch it yourself. You let me know. She seems to be the type of person that gets into a panic really easily and decides to act on it. And I think that that's a bad combination. So lastly, French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says those boys are a captive audience to mold to her liking. You mean the things that women have been doing for centuries, i.e. raising children? Yes, except that she's going to raise them differently from her daughter in a way that is probably going to be pretty destructive for the boys. So, all right. That's it for all the super chats. Do you want to say anything to any of the super chats that we just got, or take us out? We're going to go to the after show. What do you want to do, Alison?
What do I want to do? I think that we should go to the after show, and we should encourage everybody here to become a patron so you can join us in the after show, because we can have a little bit more one-on-one interaction with you, and we can continue with the discussion. I hope there are a few spicy hot takes that are left for the. Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe we could finally find the payload. What it is she's actually saying. Oh no, of course we did. She's just selling feminism.
She's just selling feminism. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
she's basically telling everybody that there are rapists in the audience, and there are rapists in their schools, and there are rapists in their football teams, and we need to sell feminism to stop it. That's basically that's the payload, Alison. She's just lucky that her son, her 6-year-old, was enlightened enough that he knew when something was illegal, when someone like Trump or Weinstein clearly didn't, even though she has no understanding of what actually happened with Trump and with Weinstein, for that matter.
Isn't he like almost like isn't it sort of falling apart, the legal case against him?
Against Harvey Weinstein? I think it is. I don't think that there have been any convictions to my knowledge. Just a lot of like hot air, smoke, bullshit. I mean, basically the majority of Weinstein's interactions with these women were consensual, and they chose to, you know, mess around with him. And so if you've made the choice and you were an adult at the time, and when all this happened, you just don't have a leg to stand on. And I'm not saying I like the guy, but the fact is, you know, if you engage in consensual intercourse because you want to get a career boost, then that's on you. You did that. But we can't turn around and act self-righteous. That's bullshit. That makes you worse than him, because at the very least, you know, he knows that what he chose to do with those people, that was, I mean, I'm not for that, but hey, what goes on in Hollywood, that's what goes on in Hollywood. We know it's a disgusting cesspool there. So, you know, but again, it's a consensual one, to my knowledge. Now, if you want to get into like the shit that's really sketchy, you want to maybe like listen to what Corey Feldman has been trying to talk about, all of the pedophilia that goes on there. That's a different story, you know. But this is not something that we should be conflating when an actress like, you know, Ashley Judd, or I'm not sure who exactly, but Rose McGowan was one of them. When they basically, you know, come out and it's like, I want to get a part in your movie, and Harvey Weinstein is like, okay, but you have to do me some favors. And they say, okay, I'll do it. Even if they don't really want to, but they really want that job, they still chose to do it at the end of the day. So that's not rape. I'm sorry, it's not in my opinion. Maybe that, and of course, this is just my opinion. You know, if you guys disagree, you can go ahead and put it. I know that he's got more power. I know he's got more money and more influence, but you can always say no. You can always have integrity and say, you know what, I'm going to make it on my own and just do it. But if you choose to sign the devil's contract, then, you know, whatever comes with that is what comes with that. That's what I think. So no, it doesn't. It's and then like to use that instance that was by and large consensual. I don't have any knowledge of anything that wasn't with Weinstein. And the Trump thing, that was him just talking shit. There's like no evidence of that at all. That's not even worth talking about. But with Weinstein, at least, you know, to take something that was by and large a consensual agreement between adults, one of which was a woman that wanted a woman or women that wanted a boost to their career, and they got it because when they went up there to get their Oscar, they thanked him personally, and there were standing ovations, you know, for him whenever they said it, because they know that he got them the job. They just had to do a little something for him. To turn around and then use that as something to throw at men everywhere, that's complete bullshit, because not only are you demonizing men for the actions of one guy who, by the way, didn't do anything, again, illegal per se, it's just kind of scummy. It's not only is that wrong, but you're also erasing the women who actually elected to utilize that service to get that benefit. And you're also like diminishing rape victims everywhere when you make that the poster child of it, because that's not what that is. So, well,
I mean, until they can actually prove that he did do something.
Yeah.
'Cause that's the other thing. Nothing has been proven yet. So I will wait, as I did during the Cologne incident. I will wait for the wheels of justice to come to a conclusion. And even then, read the transcript, read the judgment, and come to your own conclusion. But do it based on evidence, not based on rumor and conjecture. So right now, I think that this is all it's just hysteria. And it's not appropriate to expose children to this. Okay, that is my final word.
All right.
Let's go to the after show.
So we're going to
And
go.
if you guys want to join us, feedthebadger.com and become a patron. You can choose a monthly subscription, which will give you a link to the Discord. If you go through Feed the Badger, you do have to go to our Discord, which is where we have all of our archives of our shows, as well as a lively community of very interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
Like deeply interesting. Maybe a little too interesting.
Some of the most interesting people. So interesting.
Interesting.
That's what they tell me. I don't know. That's what they tell me. But anyway, so we're going to get out of here. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show today. Please give this video a like. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications and leave us a comment below. Let us know what you guys think about this. And I'll be back to check on those comments, because I always look at the comments. I don't usually respond, but I do look. If you guys have a question or whatever, put it in there. Maybe I'll get to it. With that said, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks, guys, for coming on, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.